It's interesting that the Indy 500 decided to do what the WNBA refuses to do, and that's make Caitlin Clark the face of their organization. So you may have seen the other day that the WNBA were promoting, I guess, a triple header, a bunch of games.
They didn't use it.
And when it came to the Indiana Fever game, they chose a player averaging 1 point a game, and not Caitlin Clark, who's averaging like 28 points a game.
Or Leah Boston, former first overall pick.
They decided to stab her in the back again.
Damn.
Caitlin Clark just showed up at the Indy 500 and somehow became the main event. The crowd erupted. Fans were on their feet. The energy was absolutely unreal. Social media exploded within minutes and people couldn't stop talking about it. But what happened next had everyone asking the same question. Did she nail an impossible shot? Deliver a jaw-dropping moment nobody saw coming? Or did she just create one of the biggest sports headlines of the year without even stepping onto a basketball court? The answer is even crazier than you think.
Now, despite there not being any basketball going on, Caitlin Clark has found her way back in the media. Today, she is at the Indy 500 to be the Grand Marshal. And you know Caitlin Clark came out in a grand style, man. Thousands of fans literally is at the Indy 500, and Caitlin Clark shut the place down. Now, videos is starting to come out online, pictures, and we finna react to it all. My girl Caitlin Clark put on a spectacular performance last time she played.
Did you know a single basketball player can walk into the biggest race in America and somehow become louder than 33 roaring engines? That is exactly what happened when Caitlin Clark arrived at the Indianapolis 500. The moment she appeared, the atmosphere completely changed. Fans erupted, cameras followed her every move, and the energy felt more like a championship game than a day at the racetrack. For a few unforgettable moments, the race itself seemed to take a back seat as Clark turned one of the most iconic events in sports into a full-blown frenzy. And what happened next only made the reaction even crazier.
And they hate Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, I know
the Indy
why.
500 came out and said, we'd like you to be our Grand Marshal. So Caitlin Clark can be the face of the Indy 500, but cannot be the face of the WNBA. Make that make sense.
I'll tell you how it makes sense.
Oh, that's right. They hate her maybe because she's, I don't know, a straight white woman?
Yeah,
is that possible?
That's not why.
Is that possible?
Paige Beckers is a better player. Here's why.
Is that possible?
She's not complaining to the refs nonstop with them.
She stepped into the spotlight with the kind of effortless confidence that made it clear she was more than just a basketball star. At this point, Caitlin Clark has become something much bigger, a cultural phenomenon whose influence stretches far beyond the court. Wherever she goes, attention follows. Fans show up, cameras lock in, and entire events seem to gain a different level of energy. The Indianapolis 500 didn't just welcome a basketball player that day, it welcomed one of the most recognizable figures in sports, and the reaction proved just how powerful her impact has become.
She was 22, 2-9, man. Just a lit weekend for Caitlin Clark. Now, we do know her parents. It was rumored that her parents, her aunts and uncles, and everybody came in from out of town for this moment. There was Caitlin with thousands of fans at the Indy 500.
Hey, it's Caitlin. I'm here at the Indy 500 with all my friends. Excited to be here for the first time.
So this is her first time there. And yeah, man, Lexi Hall looked like she came to show support with Caitlin Clark.
The decision to put Caitlin Clark front and center at the Indy 500 was not some last-minute publicity move dreamed up behind closed doors. It was a calculated recognition of something impossible to ignore. Her influence now extends far beyond basketball. Clark has become one of the rare athletes capable of drawing attention from people who might never watch a WNBA game. Her presence brings eyeballs, headlines, and energy wherever she goes. By inviting her into one of America's most iconic sporting traditions, the Indy 500 wasn't just celebrating a basketball star, it was embracing a cultural phenomenon whose reach now stretches across sports, entertainment, and mainstream pop culture.
Caitlin Clark out at the Indy 500 today, ladies and gentlemen, looking fresh, looking like the global icon and superstar that she is. You know, they've been putting Clark's picture on a lot of the race cars and stuff because she's the most electrifying woman in women's basketball. Dope to see Clark out here having a good time. A certain fan base always talking about Met Gala or who's more marketable.
And the moment she arrived, the reaction was impossible to ignore. This was not the kind of crowd that offers a polite round of applause and moves on. The place erupted. Fans packed the walkways, phones shot into the air from every angle, and autograph requests seemed to come from every direction at once. The energy felt spontaneous, loud, and completely genuine, the kind of frenzy that can't be manufactured because it comes from people who are genuinely excited to see someone they admire. What made the scene even more remarkable was how quickly the spotlight shifted. Before a single lap had been completed, social media was already flooded with clips of crowd reactions, fan encounters, and the roar that followed her every appearance. Within minutes, the conversation online wasn't centered on engines, strategy, or starting positions. It was centered on Caitlin Clark. Commentators, fans, and even casual observers found themselves talking about a basketball superstar who had somehow become one of the biggest stories at one of the most iconic racing events in the world. That is the kind of influence very few athletes ever reach. When someone can walk into a venue built around an entirely different sport and instantly become one of the main attractions, it says something about the size of their platform. And judging by the reaction at the Indy 500, Caitlin Clark's reach now extends far beyond the basketball court.
Man, the takeover is underway. Caitlin Clark taking over at the Indy 500. Take a look at this here. A woman of the people. See, now I gotta go to an Indy 500 to see what's really going on. I gotta go to one now. Indy 500 and F1 is on my list.
Fans were reacting as if they were witnessing something far bigger than a typical celebrity appearance. And in some ways they were. Caitlin Clark operates on a different level of visibility. Her appeal stretches well beyond basketball, drawing in families, casual sports fans, curious newcomers, and even lifelong racing enthusiasts who suddenly found themselves paying attention to a WNBA superstar at one of the biggest events in motorsports. That kind of crossover appeal is incredibly rare. Most athletes dominate within their own sport. Clark has reached a point where her presence becomes an attraction all by itself. Her supporters do not just follow scores and highlights, they create moments. They pack arenas, flood social media feeds, travel long distances to watch her play, and generate the kind of buzz that turns ordinary appearances into major events. The contrast is what makes her rise so remarkable. Plenty of talented athletes are competing at the highest level, but very few command this level of public attention. Wherever Clark goes, the conversation seems to follow. The Indianapolis 500 became the latest example of that phenomenon, as one of America's most iconic sporting events suddenly found itself sharing the spotlight with a basketball star whose popularity continues to expand far beyond the boundaries of the game itself. What stands out most is the enthusiasm of her fan base. They don't simply watch, they participate. Every appearance becomes content, every reaction becomes a headline, and every big moment seems to spark another wave of excitement. That combination of skill, charisma, and connection with fans is what has transformed Caitlin Clark from a standout player into one of the most talked about figures in all of sports.
Multiple 20-plus, 30-point games and all these assists leading your team. You can do off the court shit like this in the middle of this season, and it's cool because Clark is a hooper and she can make layups. It's great to see Clark out here representing. I think she said this is her first time doing it, but it's great because, like I say, with the NASCAR, the race car shit, they've been putting Clark's picture on some of the cars. That's dope to be represented like that as an athlete, especially for women's sports. Just growing the game, man. We love you, Caitlin.
Many players have passionate fan bases, but what surrounds Caitlin Clark often feels different in scale. Her supporters do not simply follow games, they create events around them. They travel, fill arenas, dominate online conversations, and bring an energy that can transform an ordinary appearance into a headline. That kind of influence is rare in any sport, let alone for a player still in the early stages of her professional career. The contrast becomes even more striking when you look at how far her reach extends beyond basketball. The moment Clark appeared at the Indy 500, the attention followed. Cameras turned. Social media lit up. Fans who may not have watched a single WNBA game suddenly found themselves talking about a basketball star at one of the most iconic racing events in America. It was another reminder that her appeal now stretches well beyond the hardwood. For the Indiana Fever, that visibility is invaluable. Clark has become one of the league's biggest attractions, capable of drawing attention wherever she goes. Every appearance generates discussion, every game becomes must-watch television for thousands of fans, and every major event she attends seems to gain an extra layer of buzz. That level of expectation would overwhelm many athletes, but Clark continues to handle it with a composure that has become one of her defining traits. What often gets overlooked amid the spotlight is the support system surrounding her. Family members have been there throughout her journey, providing stability while her profile continues to grow. Friends and teammates have also remained part of that foundation, reminding everyone that behind the headlines, sold-out crowds, and viral moments is still a person navigating an extraordinary rise in public attention. And that may be the most impressive part of all. As the spotlight grows brighter and the crowds get louder, Clark continues to carry herself much the same way she always has, focused on the next challenge while the rest of the sports world tries to keep up with the phenomenon unfolding around her.
So, let me start off by saying this. The WNBA is failing Caitlin Clark. It just is what it is. And if you guys want to sit here and there's people who are going to come into my comments and say, oh my God, here you are, black woman, caping for this white girl. I am. I'm putting the cape on for her because
that's the first thing they say. That's the first thing they say. Oh, well, you're black. Why are you defending her? That's the first thing they always gonna say.
It has to be said, and I have to call it out and call it for what it is. It is starting to become evident. I'm somebody who knows.
What separates Caitlin Clark from many rising stars is the breadth of her appeal. Her fan base extends well beyond traditional basketball circles, reaching people who may have never watched a WNBA game before. At the Indy 500, that crossover effect was on full display. Racing fans, families, casual sports followers, and longtime supporters all seemed equally eager to catch a glimpse of her. In an era where audiences are increasingly fragmented, that kind of widespread recognition is remarkably rare. Part of the fascination comes from the feeling that every appearance matters. Whether she's stepping onto a basketball court or showing up at a major sporting event, people pay attention. Kids want to emulate her. Parents bring their families to see her play. Casual observers become invested simply because they keep hearing her name attached to big moments. The result is a level of visibility that few athletes manage to achieve. What's interesting is that the conversation around her influence continues to grow because the attention keeps showing up in tangible ways. Games featuring Clark routinely generate heightened interest, social media discussions accelerate whenever she's involved, and major appearances quickly become trending topics. The enthusiasm surrounding her isn't confined to one region, one demographic, or even one sport. It follows her wherever she goes. That is why moments like the Indy 500 resonate so strongly. They serve as reminders that Clark's impact is no longer measured solely by points, assists, or wins. It is measured by the ability to capture attention across entirely different audiences and create excitement in places where basketball is not even the main attraction. Very few athletes reach that level of cultural relevance, and every new appearance seems to reinforce just how far her influence now extends.
Orders weren't even allowed in the pit until 1971, and the first woman to qualify happened in 1977. And being the Grand Marshal, the person who tells the drivers to go to their cars, is no small honor either. I mean, some notable ones in the past have been President Gerald Ford, Peyton Manning, even Mickey Mouse a couple times. So that's why today it was very, very cool that Caitlin Clark became the second Indiana Fever player in history to be the Grand Marshal at the Indy 500, joining the absolute legend that is Tamika Catchings. I love seeing this happen today, and learning the history of this moment made it feel even more significant.
The league has spent years searching for ways to expand its audience and break further into the mainstream conversation. Then Caitlin Clark arrived and changed the equation. Her combination of vision, shooting range, creativity, and confidence created the kind of must-watch experience that transcends the sport itself. She can make a pass that seems impossible, hit a shot from distances most players would never attempt, and do it all with a calmness that makes extraordinary plays look routine. In today's attention economy, that blend of talent and personality is incredibly powerful. What makes the story even more remarkable is how quickly the landscape shifted. Not long ago, women's basketball was still fighting for a larger share of the national spotlight. Now, games featuring Clark often feel like major events. The excitement extends beyond the final score because fans are tuning in with the expectation that something memorable might happen at any moment. That same dynamic was on display at the Indy 500. The reactions weren't the polite acknowledgments typically reserved for celebrity appearances. They were loud, emotional, and spontaneous. Fans cheered with the kind of enthusiasm usually associated with championship moments or game-winning plays. Yet in this case, the excitement came simply from seeing one of the most recognizable figures in sports appear in person. That's a rare level of star power. At the same time, the WNBA is filled with talented players building their own followings and shaping the league's future in different ways. What makes Clark stand out is the scale of the attention she attracts. Her supporters don't just watch games, they create momentum around everything connected to her. Every appearance generates discussion. Every highlight sparks another wave of engagement. Every major event she attends seems to gain an extra layer of energy. And that may be the clearest sign of her impact. At this point, Caitlin Clark is no longer just one of basketball's biggest stars. She has become a cultural attraction whose presence can influence the atmosphere of an event before the action even begins. When that happens, you're no longer talking about popularity alone. You're talking about a level of influence that very few athletes ever achieve.